I had a health class, and I was doing real well. The guy that was teaching that class, he was a track coach. We jived really well together, and it was the only class I was doing good in at that point. And I missed the final. It just slipped my mind because partying and drinking had overtaken so much of my college experience that I didn't even remember when my classes were anymore. I remember asking my grandma for money too, because I'd spent it all on booze. It bothered me because we had such a close relationship, and I really did love my grandmother more than I could ever express. But I hit her up for money, and I was using my grandmother for money, for alcohol and for drugs.
I met Nick Davis at Eastern Kentucky University in 2013. What I remember most about him is how openly he spoke about his struggles with substance abuse. Today, Nick is the founder and CEO of Anew Alternative, a low-cost nonprofit counseling program in Frankfort, Kentucky. When I met Nick, he was in the middle of putting his life back together, as it was only a few years earlier that he had reached his lowest point.
There was pain in my life that alcohol and drugs couldn't help me with. What happened was my grandmother passed away. It devastated me because she was like the closest person that I ever had in my life. And it was right after that my dad had a stroke. Got overwhelmed with addiction to drugs and alcohol. Really wrecked my life pretty good for about 6 years. And I said to myself, I'm in the shit bad enough as it is, and I'm not gonna spend the rest of my life wiping my dad's ass, and fuck this stuff. And I went in and I kicked the door in to my dad's den. I grabbed his .410 shotgun, I loaded it with buckshot, and tried to kill myself. For whatever reason, it didn't happen. The gun never fired. Gary Freeman was the sheriff at the time, so he had one of the shells in his hand, and he's like, you don't know how lucky you are to be alive right now. This is a live round. I've never seen something like this. He said I was lucky to be there, but I didn't feel lucky, and I couldn't feel lucky. And the next day I didn't feel lucky, and I told my aunt at that time, it's like, you have got to get me somewhere, because I'm gonna try it again.
Nick was taken to Eastern State, a psychiatric hospital in Lexington, Kentucky. They offered him the opportunity to get treatment. Desperate for help, he accepted.
The first counselor I had was, just not good. I feel like he looked at me and every now and then just kind of looked up from his clipboard. It's like, you still going to meetings and stuff? And it's like, yeah, I'm still going to meetings. Talking about AA meetings, NA meetings and stuff. He's like, how's the program going? I'm like, well, it's going okay, I guess. And he was just like, yeah. Any problems? Any other major problems? Feel depressed? Want to hurt yourself today? It's like, no, I'm feeling a lot better. Okay, well, that's great then. I guess that's all for today. If you don't have anything else, and I felt really pushed out the door, because there's always stuff to talk about. And I didn't feel good about it, man. I didn't feel good about it at all. I thought it was kind of bullshit, really. When I met my other therapist later on at the same facility, it was the only facility I knew was the one they had sent me to, so that's where I went when I needed to go again. I had kind of another dark period. She treated me like a person with problems that just needed some help, and that these things were fixable. And that was a new concept for me, was that these things are fixable. And then I started making goals again. And one of my goals was to go back to college and become a therapist and do what that person did for me.
To become a drug and alcohol counselor, Nick first had to rehabilitate his defaulted student loan. He rented a studio apartment in Lexington and worked 2 restaurant jobs on opposite ends of town. For the next 2.5 years, he saved every penny he could.
I was living at Zandel Lowry Studio Apartments. And I lived there because they gave me a bed because I didn't have a bed. And they're like, we'll give you a bed. It's like, okay. So here I am. I'm living in Zandel Lowry. I've got a bed that was donated by the place. Who God only knows who slept on that mattress before me. I try not to think about it. And I had like a milk crate with a TV that my sponsor gave me. It was like an old tube TV with a DVD player, and that was it. I remember I went to EKU to make my payment. And again, you don't have a lot of moments like that. It was a moment, though. It's like you could almost feel the light beaming down on me with the angels trumpeting and everything. And it's like, yes! It really did. It didn't feel mundane. It felt like I was really doing something great. And I get in there, and you know what they tell me? They're just like, oh yeah, if you're going to pay it all in a lump sum, we'll knock some off of the price. You don't have to pay the whole amount. So I actually left with some money in my pocket too. So that started my saving.
Nick re-enrolled at EKU, regained his honor scholarships, and graduated in 2.5 years. He went on to the clinical counseling graduate program at EKU.
But I remember they asked all of us, it's like, what are you getting into counseling for? What are you hoping to accomplish? Where do you see yourself going in the field? And people would say things like, oh, I want to work help with people with career issues, or I want to work with kids that have autism, or I want to work, and they got around to me and me being who I am, putting the big target on my head or whatever, I guess, I don't know. But I was just like, I want to change the scope of how drug and alcohol counseling is done across the entire state of Kentucky, and I want to overhaul what it looks like maybe in the whole of the United States. And I mean, people laughed, man. Like they were laughing in their chairs, falling out of their chairs that I would say such a thing. But I was totally serious because I'd done my homework. I had done 2 full-on undergrad studies on what counseling was available, what counseling wasn't available, how success rates were gauged, how they weren't gauged, and said they were, and all this other stuff. And it's like, man, we don't know if this stuff is working or not with the way people are doing their research. And I'd like to change that. Seemed reasonable to me at the time.
Nick eventually began his career as a practicing clinician. He spent the next 3 years working for larger established organizations. Even though his approach to counseling seemed to be effective, he often found himself at odds with management.
I didn't want to do what everybody else is doing. And again, it was a tendency, at least at a couple of places I was at, to hand me a workbook and be like, no, you need to do this program. But they hired me to do something different. So it's like, what do you really want here? And this came straight out of one of my boss's mouths. I'm not going to say who, whatever, whatnot, but let me just tell you this. It was like, well, we need you to do what we can bill for. Okay? And that again was like, pooh, right in there. Because it's like, oh yeah, it's about insurance billing. I'll tell you a story that happened to me. I had, in the same day, with the same insurance company, I had 2 clients. Their insurance company refused to continue them in a counseling program that I was involved with at the time. One because she was doing too good, and the other because she was doing too not good. And it's like, what is your benchmark here? They couldn't make up their mind. They just wanted to deny service. That's really in my opinion, that's what they wanted to do. I don't know a better way to say. It's like a mental health industrial complex, man. You got your billing team, you got your office team, you got your counseling team, you got your drug testing team, and all this stuff. And it's like you're billing for the drug test, and you're billing for this, and you're billing for that, and you're billing for the groups, and you got to pay your billing staff, so you got to make enough money for that too. And you're only making $75, $76 a pop on the individual sessions. How many people do we have in the intensive outpatient program? Doing all this stuff. And it's like, are you running a business or are you running healthcare? Right? Mental health care. And it was the business part that I kept I hated it.
Nick's passion to help his clients continued to create friction with management. as his individualized approach didn't always produce a clear diagnosis for insurance billing. After years of maneuvering through red tape, he eventually had enough.
I watched some unethical things happen financially at a counseling place that I knew of that was supposedly did really good work. And then I started, again, seeing the business side of it. And I can't tell you, there's no way, I can't voice how disgusted I was. Eventually what happens sometimes when you're trying to fight the good fight is someone asks you to compromise your values to keep your job. And I didn't. And I was fired. Well, I wasn't fired. My position, my contract was dissolved. And I was like, it's that easy to lose your livelihood because you won't do what you believe ethically is the wrong thing to do.
Nick set out to create his own treatment program. He called it Anew Alternative and began offering his services as a mobile clinic, completely free of charge. After only 8 months, he realized he couldn't secure enough grant money to continue, so he reached out to an old friend to help him craft a more workable business model. If it couldn't be free, then make it as cheap as possible for the client. Now he just needed an office, so they launched a GoFundMe campaign and began taking donations.
Actually, in the beginning, the first donation that was ever made was made by me. And actually our chief financial officer, David Kyle Sheeks, he's been a huge support and help since the very beginning, since this was nothing more than a thought for me. I mean, he's known me, we've known each other for 25 years. He's one of the best people I've ever known. And he was the only person I could trust to sell my massive collection of Dungeons and Dragons memorabilia, collectibles, comics, and all kinds of other stuff. I used to have quite a collection of some of that stuff. He sold that on eBay and generated a lot of that. So I was using those funds to keep doing what I was doing, and we were just pumping everything that was made into Anew Alternative. I mean, it was silly to hold on to some of that stuff. You can't put a price on getting a desperate mother back with her children and reconnecting a family, and now she doesn't do drugs anymore. What is that worth a comic collection? I fucking think it is. Absolutely, man. There's nothing I wouldn't have sold or given up to get this rolling.
The GoFundMe campaign only made up a tiny fraction of the total money raised. The vast majority of the startup money came from his collectibles and 2 other key donors, his father and his aunt, both of whom would pass away within the next few months. On June 1st, 2019, Nick became the new owner and director of Riverview Counseling in Frankfort, Kentucky. 6 months later, COVID hit. Convinced he was about to lose everything, Nick began to slip into a depression until his wife convinced him there was still time to figure it out.
What was interesting about what happened with the COVID pandemic and everything, it opened the doors for telehealth, doing the counseling in a secured, controlled way over the internet. A lot of these other places, they were having struggles fighting with the insurance companies, yet again, because they didn't want to pay for telehealth. And there was just this big conglomeration of everything. My clients were all cash pay, though. So there was no difference. It was just a matter of like, can I get you online? Can I help you get online? I was trying to learn this technology and learn telehealth and learn Zoom and Simple Practice and Theranest and all these, which one do I go with and what do I do and how do I do this? I was doing all that in the 2 months that we were down, that we were unable to open, that we were mandated to be closed, do not gather. Like I said, learning the technology was big, but finding a way to reconnect with my clients over the internet was the biggest thing. And it's been a transformative process for me clinically too, because how do you draw people in when they're looking at a screen? screen time, phones, computers, these are disconnectors from human interaction. You know, they're disconnectors. So how am I going to connect using something that I don't like? I don't like it. I don't like social media. It's a necessary evil and I always get swept in. It's addictive. It's made to be addictive. I don't like using it, right? But I got to where it's like, you can make a point by using your camera angle. You can make a point by getting real close to the screen, and you can do some psychodrama stuff. And God, there's no shortage of being able to do visualization. As long as you got my voice and you got your eyes closed, I can do some guided imagery and stuff. So we fought to make it relevant.
In the end, Nick's family, his belief in himself, and his desire to help his clients is what allowed his program to survive. He felt personally responsible for all of his clients' recovery as the pandemic continued to present obstacles. During the hardest months, he didn't even pay himself anything. He paid his bills, he paid his employees, and he paid attention to his clients.
It's been an overwhelmingly adaptive, and I would say positive experience to be there for people when they need it, to be there as a stabilizing force, to be there to be like, let's not be mean to one another because things are going bad. It's so easy to do. Let's not do that because it risks your recovery too, because you go away feeling bad, you know, from some of these situations my clients were having and stuff. It's like, no, we're going to get through this. We're going to get through it together. We're going to keep our heads screwed on straight. We're not going to start attacking one another in the group. We're not going to go out and show our ass. We're going to hold this together. We're going to make it. It's about survival. You know, recovery was hard before the pandemic. During a pandemic, you want people to stop using drugs, nervous as hell, anxious as hell, scared of it. It was tough, you know. But if ever there was a time to decide whether what we're doing works or not, you can ask anybody that's seen me. I won't tell you who they are, but if you find people who are willing to talk to you about it, ask them. They'll tell you.
During the worst years of his addiction, Nick described himself as a monster. He claims he hurt a lot of good people and caused a lot of damage to both relationships and property. Today, he is the shining example of redemption. So far, Nick has treated more than 500 individuals with his services. And though he acknowledges he may not have revolutionized drug and alcohol treatment in the state, he has revolutionized it for the many that have passed through his program, offering them and himself a new alternative.